Hello everyone and welcome back to SAFC Fan TV and another edition of Thursday Night Live. Joining myself tonight on the panel, we have Terry, the Mad Mistake. Terry, how are you doing?
Champion. Almost the weekend, ready for another football match. So we're getting there slowly, so happy days.
Great. As always, you're joined by Jack Shields. Jack, how are you getting on?
Yeah, I'm doing all right. Happy with Sunderland's unbeaten record of the last 5 days. So yeah, I mean, keep it going.
Makes a change for a change. And as always, we also joined by James Copley from the Sunderland Association. James, how are you getting on?
I'm good, thank you. Terry, today's my Friday. I work Sunday to Thursday, so this is my weekend. And I'm
so you're having a few beers tonight, eh? I do not drink.
No, I don't drink at the moment. So I'm a sobriety. He's treating me well.
All right, nice one.
There we have it then. As always, we are live, so if you would like to contribute to our show via the live chat, you can do so. Already in there is Mr. Man, Las Palmas Macmums, Anthony Perth, David Walker, Alan Robertson, TNSFC, Holly Nixon, Will Allen, and Nigel Dunn. So hello to everyone in there. Before we do start tonight's show, we are going to start on a little bit of a bad note, of course. The Sunderland fan who collapsed in the opening minutes at our home tie against Burton Albion, Michael Waggett, passed away a couple of days after the incident. Would just say rest in peace to a fellow Sunderland supporter. Never nice to lose one of your own. And our best wishes are with Michael's close friends and family and everyone affected by such sad news at this time. We hope you are all coping well. As for tonight's show, lads, I think there's one obvious place to kick off. Roker Report released an article yesterday which contained an email received from Charlie Methven. Methven stated that himself and Stuart Donald were willing to sell their remaining 39% of the club for £11.7 million as they value the club at £30 million themselves. He also states how he believes it is better for all parties to recognise that it's time to close this chapter swiftly and reasonably. Jack, I'll start with you on this. Your thoughts on the offer that's been made public by two of our previous owners?
Yeah, I mean, the quicker we get them out, the better. Obviously, it suits all parties, really, I think. But I'll be very careful believing or reading too much into what Stuart Donald and Charlie Methven say, to be honest. I think what they'll say in public and what they actually talk about in private and their actual beliefs in private, I think will be two very, very different things. We saw the good PR when they first came into the club, didn't they? When they first took over the club, they were going to do this, they were going to do that, and biggest budget, and we'll paint the streets red, and we'll do this, and you know, we're going to coast it and we'll start planning for the next 3 or 5 years. And then after a year or two, when things didn't go as planned and people actually analyse what they've done, there wasn't a great deal of money coming in and there wasn't a great deal of actual planning going on behind the scenes. It was very, very much all talk, no action or very little action. So I think it is a good thing, you know, because we want them out. But like I say, whether or not they actually, you know, they believe in what they say and whether or not they're telling us one thing and doing the other, that's a completely different thing, isn't it? And I think ultimately their ambition has always been buy Sunderland or invest in Sunderland, shall we say, get it as cheap as they can, try and get it up through the leagues and sell it at an inflated price and make as much money as they can, which people might say, well, they're not entitled to owe Sunderland nothing. You know what I mean? That's basically what any businessman would do, but I think it's a bit of a different scenario when you're running a football club and a big football club like ours. So I'm happy with the news that they're willing to sell, but I mean, like I say, I would take everything they say with a pinch of salt.
Yeah, before we got you, Jim, just one quick glance at the live chat as well. Hello to Ryan McCormack and Karen Monk, Philly's wife, who joined us tonight. Mick Griffiths has said, hi all, never trust a man that doesn't drink here, Terry, apparently. The Bristolian Mackham joins us as well tonight. Hello to Stuart Diggle in the live chat. James, I'll go to you on this. Your thoughts on the offer that's been made public?
Massive cynicism, to be honest. I think every Sunderland fan has to ask themselves, as Jack rightly points out, given everything that's gone on since they came to the club in 2018, do you trust what Charlie Methven and Stuart Donald have to say? Personally, and this is my honestly held opinion, I don't trust them. I'm not calling them liars per se, but I think they're very clever with what information they release and when. I think timing is everything. For me, this little episode's probably a deliberate attempt by Donald and Methven to turn the narrative around in their favour so they can secure a favourable deal. If you look at what we know, Donald and Methven want to sell. Kirill Louis-Dreyfus wants to buy, but KLD, he's a businessman on another level. He's a billionaire with serious and experienced advisors, serious lawyers. And, you know, it's understood that KLD has made further attempts to increase his shareholding, but it was unable to reach an agreement with Donald and Methven. So you have to ask yourself why that is. And basically, a businessman of that level is not going to pay over the odds for the remaining shares. So that means the price must be a stumbling block. So I think Donald and Methven have probably let slip their price publicly in the past couple of days, in the hope that it'll probably mount a bit of pressure on Kiri Louis-Dreyfus to buy the remaining shares ahead of his meeting with supporters, which took place today. Because let's face it, I mean, fans just want to see the back of the pair of them, don't they? But moreover as well, I think they've only really released that one tiny part of the deal in terms of the price for the remaining shares, when in reality, there's a whole host of other issues at play. It's a lot more nuanced. Ex-Madrox members still owe the club money and parachute payments. Is that something they are factoring in to the share price, or has this been conveniently left out of any of the statements they've released in the past sort of 48 hours? It must be noted, though, Madrox have begun to repay the money they owe to the club, but it's understood that they still haven't paid the full amount yet. And Madrox are on record to the Echo, actually, of saying that they'll repay the parachute payments before they depart the club. They told the Echo that back in May 2020. But as we understand it, I don't think that's happened in full. So nevertheless, that'll be a roadblock that needs resolving. On the flip side of it, does the 11.7 million that they want for the club include the 3.1 million they've apparently loaned to Sunderland since Kiri Louis-Dreyfus arrived, or do they want that on top? That's another question. Another question, more importantly, is the club playing interest on these loans from Stuart Donald and Charlie Methven? These are questions that will need answering, situations that will need resolving before the deal can go through. So I don't think it's as simple as just buying some shares, as Methven and Donald would probably like people to believe. I think there's a lot of moving parts that have been conveniently left out of the narrative, actually, at the moment. And to me, that reason is clear, probably to bump the price up and force KLD's hand in a way. If you look at the outlets they've chosen to interact with as well, BBC Solent are going to look at it from an Eastleigh point of view, so they're unlikely to challenge Donald from a Sunderland perspective. They're not going to. It's not in their interest to ask about, you know, the finances at Sunderland, because at the end of the day they cover Eastleigh. So
Yeah.
Roker Reports, you know, have been their chosen outlet previously. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but for whatever reason they chose to publish Methven's email verbatim without any pushbacks initially. I understand they've gone for pushbacks since, which is fair play. But this is a problem, publishing that statement verbatim for me, because we know Sunderland fans have been misled by Methven before. And in fact, it's actually my belief that Charlie Methven holds contempt for Sunderland fans on that opinion, from public and private comments that I've read or seen come directly from him. And he has a track record of saying fractious things about the fan base. He had to apologise for comments made at a meeting with supporters group in November 2020. Later in the year, he falsely claimed that Sunderland fans had tried to get rid of the last 5 owners, which we know isn't true. And if you look at the timeline since Stuart Donald and Charlie Methven came to the club, it's a litany of disasters. I mean, they bought the club essentially using its own money, with the deal leveraged against parachute payments from the Premier League. You look at something like the Josh Madger situation. Obviously, there was different factors at play, but they could have handled that much better, and I saw it firsthand. They paid over the odds for Will Grigg, which is a financial decision the club is still living with today. They ballsed up the FFP takeover, They entertained Mark Campbell as a potential buyer at the Academy of Light when it was clear to anyone with access to the internet that it was a non-starter. You know, Donald caused a bit of a Twitter pylon before he left the platform on one particular fan for speaking up regarding Sunderland's finances. The pair threatened legal action regarding early reports into Sunderland's finances. National reports that came out from a Daily Mail and the Sun. Certain national journalists were banned from the club for their reports into the financial picture. The way the pair treated former club employees didn't come across as well. Didn't come across as great. Just watch the Sunderland Till I Die documentary, speak to a couple of former employees. To be fair, I think we could go on and on about it, but we don't have all night. So to conclude, I think this past couple of days has probably come straight from the Methven and Donald playbook. We've seen it before over the years. They like to try and influence public opinion for their own ends. But for me, I think the tactic has become dated and transparent, and I think Sunderland fans are very much wise to it now.
Yeah, I do find it strange why they've decided to make this information so public as to what their asking price is. I don't know if they're trying to save face a little bit as well, or save grace with what Methven stated along the lines of how he realises now that it's best for all parties to move on. He was going along that kind of wavelength. That, along with the actual statement they made in terms of this is how much we'll accept for the club, I almost feel as if it's that typical kind of PR stunt we've seen from Donald Methven over the past few years to get people on side. Like I say, I question why they've done it, but I think that can only be the only real reason, really, something along them lines. Terry, before we go to you, trying to say 177 people watching, 38 likes. So if you haven't already, please do give us a thumbs up. It is free to do so. And subscribe to the channel is free to do so as well, and you won't miss out on any of our future streams or videos. Terry, I imagine you've got a fair few terse words to say about this.
Well, I completely agree with James. They're both a couple of twats, you know. We've known this for a while. Old salmon pants there. There's only one mouth between the two of them because Donald can't open his mouth. He's shit scared. Salmon pants is always wants to be in the limelight. He's always there. Even at the very first beginning, the very first interview, when we saw them both together, you know, when Donald opened his mouth, you could see salmon pants was like, he just wanted to get in. He was scared in case Donald said something completely wrong, you know. So he's a control freak. And there's no way, if KLD come out today and said, right, there's 11.7 million, I'll see you later, they'll probably say, well, we'll think about it until the season's over. And then if we get promoted, they'll up the price. Because they're not going to sell the club until the season's over. Because if they get promoted, in their eyes, the club will be worth more. You know, be worth more. It's still worth 11.7 now. They shouldn't be given anywhere near that amount of money for the club at this moment in time. And like they both spin the truth. Like I said, that they're all about 9 million still. Madrox still owes, but they've loaned the club 3 million. I mean, how does that work? Surely you just pay off the debt first. You know, KLD, he's bought 41% of the shares of the club. He's the billionaire. He's the person who'll probably keep the club afloat anyway. Will keep the club going. I mean, Donald and Methven on the back seat. There shouldn't be anywhere near the club with the finances. They should be paying off the debt that they actually owe the club. So for me, amongst Sartori as well, they should be paying off the 9 million if that's what they still owe before they even get any 11.7 million. So that should come off the total for me. So I think it's just, like I say, they're just trying to muddy the waters for this meeting tonight, trying to test the waters, trying to appease the fans a little bit. Think we all thick as fuck because we're not, because we know what they're like. You know, they're just a couple of, I don't want to get too deep in calling them names because I don't want to particularly hate anybody, but just salmon pants does me hating. You know, Putin's probably the person I hate most in the world at this moment in time, but Charlie Methven's like on that list down the bottom somewhere. But I don't think they'll ever sell the club until the season's over anyway. So we'll get back to this when the season finishes, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, it was of my belief that they would probably look to either sell the shares once you were promoted to the Championship or the Premier League, because naturally their club, the club becomes, worth a lot more. Especially if you can kind of solidify yourselves as a pretty solid mid-table Premier League team. It's worth so much more than a League One team that's struggling to get promoted year after year. So, like I say, I question why it is they've released this information. I think it's got something to do with PR, trying to get fans back on side potentially. Or trying to maybe point the finger at KLD, because naturally fans are probably now going to look towards KLD and say, have you not got that money to pay for it? Why have you taken the club over, etc., etc., etc. So, I mean, I guess, it's still all up in the air, isn't it, really? We've got a lot still to kind of find out. One thing I did find was interesting, there was no mention of Juan Sartori's 20% share within the email that was sent. James, I'll start with you first. What do you make of that?
Well, the 20% obviously makes him quite an important player. He has links to Madrox, obviously, because he was formerly part of Madrox, or the group formerly known as Madrox, as they've decided they're now known, or because they don't exist anymore, which is funny. But he also has links to Louis Dreyfus as well. So Juan Sartori initially stepped down from the board after Louis Dreyfus took his controlling stake and bought his shares, but he's obviously back on the board now. Nobody really knows what his intentions are. He's been for want of a better word, enigmatic since his arrival or non-arrival on Sunderland. If you remember, in 2018, he was in with the away fans early on in the season. We all thought he was going to sort of like fund the club and we're going to have links with Uruguay. And then he scuttled off back to Uruguay to pursue his political career. He seems to be in and out of the club every now and again. Obviously, I think when you own 20% of a football club, you have to take your share of accountability. So I don't think that he should be absolved of blame alongside Charlie Methven and Stuart Donald. I think he's equally as accountable, and we need to know what his intentions are as well. Obviously, there was that mad thing that he managed to get his shares for £1 or whatever. So it would be nice to know what's going on there. But at this stage, there's actually no sign that Sartori is looking to sell any of his shareholding. So you're looking at Kira Louis-Dreyfus potentially taking Donald and Methven shares, but not Sartori's as it stands. And yeah, as I say, he's got a long-standing relationship with the Louis-Dreyfus family, so there's not necessarily any willingness on Louis-Dreyfus to get Sartori out of the club. He's obviously been on club business this season. He's visited Wayside on a couple of occasions this season. He was here during the January transfer window, took part in some discussions. So it looks at this stage, and you can actually read about this on the Sunderland Echo website, piece by Phil Smith that answers a few of these questions that we're going through tonight if you want some more information. But it looks like at the moment, as it stands, Sartori would play a part in Sunderland's future, regardless of the situation regarding Stuart Donald and Methven, just because he has that existing relationship with Kira Louis-Dreyfus. And actually, we haven't. But this is the thing with with Juan Sartori as well. We don't actually hear from him. So
yeah,
we've heard from Stuart Donald and Charlie Methven, and whilst I think there's a deliberate reason we've heard from him, then I'm loath to sort of take anything that they say on face value. At least the one thing we do know is that they want to sell the shares. With Juan Sartori, there's no indication that he would want to sell his shares yet. So my honest opinion, he'll be around for some time to come. In what guise or to what level of funding he provides is unclear at the moment.
I think there was talk that Sartori might have been part of the deal with Methven coming, that he may have been a close associate with them, might have had business relations with them or something at the time. It slipped my mind really, but I think at the time there was mention of that. James, is that ringing a bell for you? Or?
Yeah, as I say, that the sort of like Sartori's an associate of Donald and Methven. He knows them, but he's also, his family are close to the Louis-Dreyfus family as well. So I think there was some business between Sartori, Methven, and Donald before they took over the club. But at the end of the day, he sort of owns his shares by himself, and we don't know that he wants to sell or is considering selling. So at the moment, it revolves specifically around Donald and Methven, which is it's another weird caveat, because obviously you had that group that were called Madrox, which was Sartori, Methven, and Donald. They no longer exist. So now it's sort of Donald and Methven out on their own trying to sell, and Sartori's sort of, Sunderland fans don't know. They need clarity on what his role is, what his role will be, because there's that saying, isn't there? Too many chiefs, not enough Indians, and it seems to me like that's the case with Sunderland at the moment. Although Louis-Dreyfus signed this executive shareholding agreement and has control over the sort of big picture thinking at the club, you've still got these influencers, Donald, Methven, and Sartori, who are still kicking around. And whilst they might not make any specific decisions, the way football clubs work, funded on a pro rata basis, they still have to commit to a level of funding. So that could hamstring the club at the moment. Say, I have no idea if this is true or not. This is just a figure I'm plugging from my mind. But if Kira Louis-Dreyfus wanted to spend 10 million, 2 million on players in the summer, 2 million on the wage budget, 1 million on the pitch, and a couple of million on the stadium and a couple of million on the Academy of Light, they would have to receive equal funding from their partners in the club. So obviously that could seriously hold the club back in its current guise, the way the shareholding's set up at the moment.
Yeah, Jack, before we go to you on Juan Sartori, just quickly going back to the live chat, hello to Carter McBride. David Walker says they removed the obligation to pay it back a while ago, Terry. Spannerman, Jeff Hawcroft, hello to you, says Terry v. Putin, who's the scariest. Hello to Fullwell 007 as well. And DJ Sizzler Watson, as always, joins us in the live chat. Jack, I'll go over to you, though. Juan Sartori's no mention of him at all in the letter that Methven sent. What do you make of that?
I think it's telling. I think it's telling that the kind of, as James has touched on, there's a bit of a split now. The group formerly known as Mad Rocks, like when you get a boy band and one of them's gone, they kind of try and distance themselves a little bit, and it's a bit like that, isn't it? They've been the threesome, Stuart Donald and Charlie Methven. That
in anyone's head.
we know all about them, and we know that they are still involved as their names are all over. But the fact Juan Sartori isn't mentioned, the fact he is a little bit closer, as we understand it, to KLD, points towards all things looking like he is going to be still involved at some stage. And I don't know what to make of him, because, like I say, we know what we get with Charlie Methven and Stuart Donald. We don't like what we get, but we know what we get. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, most people think it's a bad thing now. We know exactly what we're getting with Sartori now. There is this bit of a question mark about him. He has been seen a little bit. He's obviously got a bigger share than Charlie Methven's actually got, but talks 10 times. He shares 4 times more what Charlie Methven's got, but Charlie Methven talks 400 times more than Juan Sartori talks, which doesn't really make sense. If you're judging it on who actually puts the money in. You've got Juan Sartori, who's got a bigger share, doesn't talk, and Charlie Methven only holds a very small amount, yet can't shut up. So I think it's a little bit of a worry for me, because I think sometimes with people, you don't know what to make of them, and you don't know what's going on behind the scenes. And because he is this question mark, and sometimes that can be, it might be a good thing, it might come good in the end, but it's a bit of a negative for me, because I think, at least we know what we're getting with the other two, whereas with him, there's this question mark. Is he really interested in football? Because he's got his political interests as well. Do you know what I mean? He's ran in Uruguay some political stance. So you've got all that going on. What's that? Sorry,
I think it was for president of Uruguay. I
didn't realise it was that high up. I knew he was involved somewhere in Uruguayan politics. So you've got this question mark, and I think all things are pointing towards the fact his name isn't mentioned in that. I think he is still going to be involved with the club. So I think it's a case of wait and see, but I just think he needs to speak a little bit more. He needs to come out he needs to talk a little bit more than he has done, and hopefully shut Charlie Methven up along the way as well.
I actually thought, just to put in there, I thought the funny thing about Charlie Methven was, and that statement, which was ludicrous, really thinking about it, was that he said that that fans wanted him and Stuart Donald to stay away from the club. And they've listened, and they've stayed away from games, and they don't have any. They've stayed away from the Stadium of Light, of what he said, and they don't have any influence in the running of the club. He's at every other away game, so it's like it's almost like he's deliberately winding the fans up to me. I'm a Sunderland fan. I live in Hendon. I've supported the club all my life. I feel wound up by it, like, as well as trying to keep professional, because I work for the Sunderland Echo and whatnot. It feels to me like he deliberately tries to wind us up.
I've always kind of reserved a little bit of judgment when it comes to him turning up at matches. I know he's at the vast majority of away games in the director's box and such. And I know a lot of people can get annoyed at it, but I've always kind of reserved judgment, because I think whilst he still does own, a part of the club, albeit only 5%, I do think he has a right to be at games when he wishes to. As soon as that 5% goes, he is no longer welcome at this football club in any way, shape, or form. And I'm not saying by any stretch of the imagination that we like him or whatever, but I think if you do own part of a business, then you do have a right to kind of watch its or oversee its business, really.
Yeah, you're completely right. He has a right to be there, and of course, the defence from Sunderland is that every opposing team's director is afforded an invitation by the opposing club to the director's box. But he still has a choice as well. He knows exactly what he's doing, and don't release statements saying that you've distanced yourself from the club and you're some sort of saint who's been hounded out. When in reality, I think you're just there to wind people up and to massage your ego.
Yeah, I guess that is a fair point. Jack, I know you want in, but we've kept Terry quiet for a little while. So Terry, the Juan Sartori being, no mention of him in the letter. What do you make of it?
I just can't get that out of my head. The new movie coming this summer, The Threesome, starring Salmon Pants and Donald Dick. Juan Sartori, right? I think he's a bit of a dark horse, to be fair. I mean, he comes in, he gets a club for £1, 20% shares allegedly for £1, and he just sits back. And if they get promoted the first season, he can make a fortune. And he could easily just buy the rest of the shares of Donald Duck and Salmon Pants. If they don't get promoted, he sits back and waits because he not put any money into it, and he's still been bought for £1. Now he gets his close family member in KLD, who's a billionaire, and the whole family's billionaire, being in football all their lives. And then he says, right, you can come in, you can buy some of Donald Duck's shares, eventually take over Salmon Pants' shares, and I'll just stay with 20%. Now when the 80% shareholder KLD starts putting money in, he's obviously got plenty of money. He'll have plenty of people in the background. He'll start putting money in. He gets the club promoted. Then they both start making a kind of bit of cash. So I think he's a bit of a dark horse. I think he'll come into his own when the other two have gone, and KLD has the 80% of the shares. So the jury's out with Sartori for me. He's popped up the first day, showed his face a couple of times, not done much else. Let the two gobshites get on with it, and then he sits back. And if it all goes to pot, they take all the blame, and he'll come out smelling the roses one day. So I think he's a clever bloke.
Jack, I know you weren't in there just a moment ago, but hello to Michael Bowers, who joined us on the live chat. John Forbes in there as well tonight. Harley Nixon. Hello to Ian Barron, the Darlington fan who joined us in the live chat as well tonight. And I put it on screen there. Damiano Rinzivilio, I'll try and say after a few drinks, says, if 30,000 fans chip in 400 quid each, that's 12 million, donate it to Terry to buy them shares himself. But Jack, you wanting in just a few moments ago?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think from my point of view, I think when Methven and Donald particularly took over, I think there wasn't any real long-term plan beyond that first year. Everything they spoke about was when we get promoted, if we get promoted, when we get promoted, and I think I don't think they could see at any point any other scenario than Sunderland getting promoted. And I think when we didn't get promoted that first season, suddenly it was like from then on, it was like panic. I think which was just cut corners all the way, and they didn't really have a long-term plan, both financially and off the field. It was suddenly like, well, we'll just take it as it comes, and you can't really do that with a football club of our size. You know what I mean? There was no real provisions. I think it was just a case of buy it. Or invest in the club, shall we say, get promoted, and then stack them high, sell them for whatever we can get. And there was no long-term plan, and I think that's a worry really, because you want people with some kind of vision for the football club, and it was only after that first season did we really see them for what they were. And I think there's a real lack of discord between us and them. I think that you look at the type of personality and character is there, and just particularly Charlie Methven, he just comes across as someone who just doesn't understand or doesn't have any kind of anything in common with most Sunderland supporters. The way he talks, the way he dresses, as Terry touches on, but it all points to the persona of really someone that's has nothing to do with Sunderland and doesn't really get Sunderland AFC as a whole. And I think that hasn't helped either.
Terry, I know you want in just before, but I just want to say 230 people watching, 84 likes. If you haven't already, please do press the thumbs up button. Give us a like. Subscribe to the channel. It's free to do so as well, and you won't miss anything we do in the future. Let's see if we can get 200 likes tonight. That'll be greatly appreciated before the end of the stream. Terry, you wanting in?
Yeah, it was what you were saying about the first season. You could tell at the playoffs when things weren't going the way, how angry and upset Charlie Methven was going. He was getting angry, frustrated. You could see his whole world was falling to bits. For me, he's just driven by money and greed and lust and all those horrible things. When he first got to the club, he come around the clubs and pubs, and anybody who was like streaming the match, he was going to get angry with, and he was calling them, I forget what he called them now. He did call them something on the F, didn't he? Parasites. Begin with players, call them all parasites, and then he was blaming the fans, and then on Netflix, how he was going on with the members of staff. He just loved hearing his own voice. He's not the kind of person you want at all anywhere near the club. And going to every away game, being asked at the director's box, all the freebies, that's all he wants. He just wants. He won't give anything back whatsoever. You can find out on websites online what previous employees have said about him. He's an absolutely horrible human being.
Terry, just on what you were saying there in terms of as well going to things like director's box, all expenses paid, etc., etc., etc. Like we were talking just before we went on stream and just saying on their part, on Stuart Donald and Charlie Methven's part, what a business move this has been if they do end up selling the shares for 11.7 million combined, taking over a club for nothing, well, paying for the club with its own assets, essentially, with the parachute payments, taking things from the club more than likely over the few years, as well as all the expenses they'll have gained through travel, meals, etc., the director's box, and then making 12 million quid out of it between the two of them. I just think it screams of, on their part, a brilliant business move. Obviously, not as much for ourselves, really.
Especially when you consider they bought the club with its own money.
Well, yes, that as well. Lads, I think that more or less wraps up the kind of conversation on this night, unless anyone else had anything else that they would like to add to it. No, we are pretty content with that. Thank God, I almost felt as if, thank God, this news was released yesterday, because I was struggling, to be honest, for topics to go through tonight. And what was going to open the show was that before we go to Saturday's game, on Monday night, the under-23s had a game at home to Stoke. Patrick Roberts playing just over an hour, being named in the starting lineup, as well as 3 trialists. So what an interesting opening to the show that would have been. But I'd just like to throw it out of the panel, really. 3 trialists in the starting lineup, as well as Patrick Roberts getting an hour. We've got a few players at the moment who seem as if they're trying to regain fitness in order to play first-team football, and they're actually missing out from, first-team action due to that. Terry, I'll start with you. Should we be using our under-23s games to get some of the first-team lads fitter?
Oh, 100%. Why not? I mean, end of the day, we've the team that played at the weekend was a good team, but when you start getting 1 or 2 little niggles and injuries, you need the bench to be fully fit, and our bench is not fully fit. Defoe's not fully fit. You got Roberts not fully fit. So it's a good idea. I mean, especially Roberts. I mean, he's obviously been a class act in the past with Celtic, so getting him fully fit towards the back end of the season's got nothing but a plus for me.
Yeah, definitely, I agree with that. James?
Yeah, I think it's positive that Roberts, he asked to play as well for the under-23s to build up his match fitness, so he's clearly keen to force his way into the side. I feel a bit sorry for the likes of him and Clark, because, it's the day before transfer deadline day, you've just joined the club and Lee Johnson gets sacked. Not saying that wasn't the right decision, because I think it was, but your head's probably spinning after that. Then the new guy comes in, it takes a while for him to come in. You're playing under, Mike Dodds and Michael Proctor. You don't know whether you're coming or going. You're probably lacking a bit of match fitness, but there's massive things going on at the club. And then Alex Neil's come in. He's not happy with the level of fitness of some of the new guys. He's made that abundantly clear. So a lot of these new players won't know whether they're coming or going. But I think, Patrick Roberts in League One could be a huge asset for Sunderland. We've seen him do it for Celtic. He played a little bit for Borough. It didn't really work out for him in France, but you would think at League One level, if we could get him fit and firing, come the run-in, he could be a very important asset. Yes,
largely agree. Jack, yourself, the likes of Clark, Roberts, even Trey Hume as well, Jermaine Defoe's, plenty of players need the fitness at the moment, really. Do you think we should be putting them in the under-23s to get them some game time?
Yeah, I think it's a no-brainer. I think it's the closest thing you're going to be able to get to a real first-team game at this level. There's no real comparison, but that's the closest you are going to get. And I think in terms of players being keen, I think it is the right move, because there's not a great deal of games left this season, you know what I mean? So if they weren't, they would wait for an opportunity and maybe get 2 or 3 games off the bench. Suddenly you're looking and thinking, well, you're still not match fit. We're going to be 7 or 8 games to go. By the time you do get match fit, the season might be finished. So I think anything that can give us a little bit of an advantage is going to be a good thing, you know what I mean? Particularly with a squad who's looked very, very tired over the last few weeks. I think that's partly down to why our form went so bad. I mean, obviously, confidence went, and we've had a lot of upheaval, as James has touched on, with the manager going and Jermaine Defoe coming in and things like that. But I think tiredness did play a part. I watched 2 or 3 games that we lost in that bad run, and a lot of the players just look fatigued. They look like we've been using the same squad repeatedly. We had options that we weren't really trying, and we went from one extreme to the other. We had players that were overplayed, absolutely knackered, needing a rest, and you had lads on the bench and out of the game that really needed some minutes, and it's how to manage that. So I think if under-23 football is probably the closest thing we can get to a League One game. It's obviously no comparison, but it's as close as you're going to get. And I think the fact he's keen enough to try and get himself going is a good thing. So I think it can only be a positive.
It's mental. Sorry to jump in, but it's mental fatigue as well. You look at someone like Alan Doyle, who's obviously a quality player, but he's probably physically tired. He's probably mentally knackered. He's 18, 17 when he signed for the club. First season of senior football. He's been used and used and used. And then Jamalji comes in, who's coming back off an injury. He's chomping at the bit. He's a bit more fresh in his legs. Well, a lot more fresh in his legs and a bit more mentally fresh as well. And he puts in a great performance against Wigan. So, I hear this argument all the time. Oh, they're only young lads that they should be expected to play twice a week. And what do they need a break for? I think that's vastly, massively inconsiderate given the pressure these lads play under and amidst. I know they're compensated well for it, they're paid well for it, but they're all human beings at the end of the day. So mental fatigue and physical fatigue is a thing, no matter how much you get paid and no matter how young you are. So the likes of Callum Doyle, I think it's good that he's come out.
Yeah, I mean, I've been saying the same thing for a little while now. I think the three that stand out for me is Doyle, Sirkin, and Neil as three players who you go back when we're on that great run at the start of the season. They were, absolutely fantastic. Basically, every game that they played, you could probably make a case for them being man of the match, more or less. Pretty much mistake-free, controlling the game, playing out of the skin, really, and they almost seemed steals. Getting Doyle on loan, Neil's graduated from the academy and getting Sirkin for, I think, free. From Tottenham, there might be a few clauses in his contract, depending on how successful he is. But it almost seemed like a steal to get them to consider how good they were over the course of the season. I think Doyle's had a dropped off, gradually. I think he had a really bad run around about October, November time. Got better again for a few games, but on the whole, from those first few games of the season, slowly dropped off. And like you say, I think it's physical fatigue. It is a heck of a lot quicker of a game. A lot more physical of a game under 23s to men's football. But additionally as well, the mental fatigue. There's a lot more, tactics in there. There's a lot more pressure with the crowd. He's playing against, some blokes that are probably even more than double his age at times, who've, veterans of this level and know every trick in the book. And I just think what's cost us a little bit this season is not really rotating. At times, I do think injuries have cost us, and we've not had the means to rotate. I look at, the injury crisis towards the back end of last year. We had a lot of players who weren't even available to come in. A lot of under 23s making up the bench. So I definitely, have sympathy towards that. But additionally as well, I think there's been times when we should have rotated, but we haven't. And we've kind of been more rigid and stuck to our ways. Even when you're winning games, it is necessary sometimes just to chop and change to keep players fresh and to keep players motivated as well, especially at this level. So many players are inconsistent and whose fitness levels aren't quite at the top. And with the playoffs around the corner now, I think, it's the perfect opportunity. If we can, of course, we need to guarantee that playoff spot and get the best one we can, but also to kind of rest a few players going into that period. And I guess that segues quite nicely into the next little conversation. James, I'll start with you. We've got, about 10, 11 games left now. Is a priority to look to build players' fitness up as well as rest players who need it? Or should we 100% just go and try and win every single game because, we need to?
I don't think they've got any choice at the moment. I think they need to cement the playoff players, otherwise they're going to fall out of it. They need to build on the Wigan performance and keep winning. It must be win at all costs at the moment because, Sunderland are in 6th on 59 points. Wigan below them, just outside the playoff. They're on 58 points. They've played the same amount of games. Plymouth Argyle have got 2 games in hand on Sunderland at the moment. They're on 56 points. Ipswich are knocking around. They're on 35 games with 53 points. Sheffield Wednesday are above Sunderland only by 2 points. They've got a game in hand. So from a position of looking unlikely that they could ever fall out the playoffs, it's a real possibility now. So, get the team firing quickly, whatever works, and just do it because we need to firstly cement the playoff place. We can't afford another collapse like last season when or if we do cement the playoff position, because we need to hit the ground running if we are to head into that semi-final. Because we know what happened last time. The team was low on confidence, low on form, and Lincoln completely did a number on them in that semi-final. So it needs to happen now, and it needs to continue to happen because time is seriously running out now.
Yeah, I mean, I look at the last, the last 2 times we've been in the playoffs have obviously been in League One. That first season that we were down here, we had all right form all season. It went up and it went down, but then I think we hit our worst form in that first season. In the last kind of 5 or 6 games, especially, that didn't really bode well going to the playoffs. You could argue if that had been different, it may have had an impact. in the final against Charlton. And of course, last season as well, where we were up and down all year, didn't look brilliant for the entire season, and then really found our feet in kind of January, February, March time, only to then fall away in April and May when it really counted, and we went into the playoffs, a team, not informed the slightest. On the flip side, you look at a side like Blackpool, who of course won the playoffs last season. They were, down the bottom half of the table already in January and had a great second half of the season and probably had everything going for them, really. Terry, how should we, try to handle the remaining kind of 10-ish games there is left?
Exactly the way that we played on Saturday, with, passion, pride, at them from the start, determination, work as team ethic. Everything seemed to go really well on Saturday. Everyone was pulling the socks up. Everyone did the bit. Even players that looked tired like Serkin seemed to have come around and play a little bit better on Saturday. And I totally agree with the youngsters. There's no coincidence. The three youngest players are the three that looked the most tired towards the end of the season. Like Full 007 says, they're still kids, 19, 18. They've got to grow into the body first. They've got to grow into the shell. They're not fully mature. And it's physically as well. It's mentally, it's the mind as well, So it's like when things start going badly, how do you turn that around? It's harder for younger players, and like exactly what Alex Neil said, it's the first season playing in a man's league all the way through the season. So you've got to give them a bit of a break, I think, at times, and that's where the squad rotation does come into play. Serkin had a double hernia, I think it was. He might have came straight back from the double hernia, end of an injury-hidden squad. Teams getting beat.
Callum Doyle
come straight in. What's that?
Callum Doyle had concussion, if you remember, as well. He missed
exactly. And the comeback, the team's getting beat. He's not fully. He's probably being rushed back, not fully fit. Had no games to get himself sorted out. So you have to give Serkin, Doyle, and Neil a bit of a break this season for me, and we'll see better from them next season. So, but we've got to play what we did against Wigan. I mean, we've got to take it to the teams. We've got to try and be in the faces. We've got to be full hard press. But at the same time, we've got to concentrate at the back because the defence was a lot better. Shamaji had a good game. I hope his form continues and grows. As I say, we want to keep Bailey Wright fit and players coming back. The likes of McGeady, 09, and Broadhead are not actually doing any physical contact on the pitch yet. They're just running on the grass. So, kicking the ball about. So it's going to be a while, another 3 or 4 weeks before I think we even see any of those players back. But yeah, it's a matter of, as long as we get the playoffs, I'll be happy with the playoffs at this moment in time. Anything else is a complete surprise.
Can I just add one thing in the comments? So, I think we need to dispel this myth. Love you, wee Philly, but you're saying young pro footballers being tired. It's bollocks in my eyes. Some blokes grafting 60 hours a week with a physical job gets tired. Yeah, they probably do get tired as well. But just because a lad plays football, doesn't mean he can't get tired physically and mentally as well. Just because he's a bit younger, just because he doesn't do what would be described as a hard labouring job in a factory or something. That these lads they're doing training daily. They're in the gym. They're swimming. They're strength training. They've got all of the classes, the tactical meetings. They're playing once, twice, sometimes 3 times a week. They've got the whole pressure. They're under the spotlight all of the time. How many people live in Sunderland? How many people support Sunderland? They live in that goldfish bowl. It's got to be mentally fatiguing, especially if you're young. I don't care what anybody says. In this comparison, they're there's blokes grafting 60 hours a week. Yeah, there is. And of course, they get tired as well. But that doesn't mean that young lads playing football can't also get tired. It's, I don't do any sort of physical labour, but I get tired doing my job mentally. It's one of those things. It affects people in different ways. And I don't think that we should, forget just how hard it is to be a footballer and how hard they have to work, because they really do have to work extremely hard to get into that position.
Yeah, I think as well, it's a different type of tiredness, isn't it? I mean, with all due respect to those who do have physically demanding hard labouring jobs, it's a completely different kind of tiredness you're looking at. I mean, as well, you got to consider there's a competing element to it, and if you've got one squad who throughout the course of a season has been effectively rotated, rested when need be, when confidence is low, new players are brought in, and everyone's been managed correctly, and one squad hasn't. There's been players who haven't been played quite as much, players who've played nearly every game, some who clearly need a rest, some who clearly need more minutes and more match sharpness. You can see which one's probably going to come out better, because one squad's as fresh as they can be, confident, but equally rested. And another side's a mixture of fatigue players and players that aren't fit enough. Jack, you want in as well? I don't think we've beaten you on this as well.
Yeah, I agree with what James says. I don't think really it does anybody any good to make these comparisons whereby these lads are, these lads aren't tired. I've worked, 60 hours a week, or I'm a labourer, or I work down the pit, or I don't think it, really. I'm not saying those lads aren't tired. Of course, you're tired if you work 60 hours and you do a manual labour job. Of course you are, but I don't see what relevance it really has to young lads playing football. Just on account of where do we go the rest of the season? I think really from here on in, I've looked at the fixtures now. It's as Elvis sang, it's now or never really, because I think these three games coming up now, we've got Charlton, Fleetwood, and Crewe. Particularly Charlton on Saturday, I think they were on a terrible run. I think they've lost 5 on the spin. I know people are saying it'll be typical Sunderland if they put that right on Saturday and turn up and beat us. And Charlton are one of those teams that we do have a bit of a problem with over the years. You think of the playoff finals and the 3 own goals in 8 minutes, and it always seems to be Charlton that are on the right end and we're on the receiving end. But I think now after that we've got Lincoln, we have Rotherham, Oxford. We've still got Plymouth to play. So these are the real. If it has to be now, we have to put 2 or 3 wins together to consolidate the place in the playoffs. Because if we continue the bad form now, it's going to tail right off. We've got players with teams with games in hand on us. I think, as touched on in terms of the style, though, we go at it. We start from the first few minutes, intensity, play on the fact that they're probably going to be a bit low on confidence and really hammer it. And I think if we get the first goal on Saturday, I think it should be, famous last words, which should be a fairly comfortable afternoon. We should go on to really take control of the game. I think, their crowd will turn a little bit, hopefully. And like you say, low confidence, bang out of form. If we can continue the way that we played on Saturday with an intensity from the first whistle, obviously scoring after 2 minutes helps as well. I think we could be on for a good afternoon, hopefully.
Yeah, Terry, I know you want in just before, but James, I know we've only got you for a few more minutes. Jack touched on it there. Charlton have lost their last 5 games. Will it be 6, or will the Sunderland Charlton curse continue?
Yeah, well, Charlton are in bad form, as you say. Haven't won in 5, lost the last 5. Given the history between the 2 clubs, the double playoff heartbreak, Sunderland winning the last game only points towards a Charlton win for me, and I'm gonna stick with that prediction in the hope that I'm proven wrong. But Charlton really are Sunderland's bogey team. I was talking on our podcast for the Sunderland Echo called The Raw. When they came to the Stadium of Light, Sunderland were in a decent run of form. Charlton had just sacked a manager, and they came up and they ground out a 1-0 win, which was the beginning of one of Lee Johnson's streaks. So yeah, we don't have it very good against Charlton, but away from home again, it's a tough game. It's a tough place to go. They've slowly sort of started to climb up the league. They've got the manager there. Is it Johnny Jackson? Yeah, it's Johnny Jackson who used to play there. So he really gets the club, and he'll have them organised, disciplined. So you just hope that Sunderland don't do a Sunderland. I mean, the key thing for me is with this Sunderland team is they can't concede, because they don't do very well when they concede. If they score first, Sunderland tend to do quite well. You saw that against Wigan, get the first early goal. We've seen that pretty much all season. But if the chips start to go against us a little bit, you do fear for Sunderland, especially on the road. You look at this team's been beaten 6-0 away from home at Bolton. What was it? 4-0 at Sheffield Wednesday, 5-1 at Rotherham. So you do worry when Sunderland are on the road. But as I mentioned earlier, they need to start winning and winning soon, just to cement that playoff picture, because it is by no means assured. And bearing in mind, historically in the EFL, there's usually one team that comes from nowhere in mid-table and puts together a great run and ends up in the picture. We still don't know who that's going to be. So, Alex Neil needs more points on the board very, very quickly.
James, thanks for joining us. I know you've got some food on the way, so enjoy it.
Thank you very much. Enjoy that. Take care.
Cheers, James. I think we'll go. We'll go like this for the remainder of the show. Just quickly back to the live chat, Emma Hansen echoing part of what James said there, saying if we get the first goal early, like Saturday gone, it will give us a confidence boost, which I do agree with. I think that was part of why we were able to get the win on Saturday. Terry, I'll start with you then. Charlton versus Sunderland at the weekend. Like I say, Charlton are in some terrible form at the moment, lost their last 5. Something's got to give here. What do you think is going to happen?
Well, when we say bogey teams, we've got tongue-in-cheek, surely, because curses and bogey teams is what a load of crocker shite that is. Come on, bogey teams and curses. Each team has the same opportunity, same chance when they go into the game on Saturday. All this bogey rubbish and curses, our man. You're not watching a horror movie at this moment in time. Charlton are in an awful run of form. Johnny Jackson's got them playing well. No, he hasn't. They're playing shit. They lost last 5 games. Terrible. So he's got them organised, well organised. That sounds like good organisation to me, losing the last 5 games. So it's a great opportunity to go and beat Charlton down at the Valley. Why can't we not? Why shouldn't we go and beat them? We just beat Wigan 3-0. We look great on Saturday. Let's put back-to-back performances. Alex Neil's just come in. He's not going to, accept mediocrity in a game after that performance against Wigan. So I think he'll have this team up for them at the weekend. And going back to the younger players, I go back to my coach when he was coming through the ranks as a kid. He might have been doing 20 mile a week, 30 mile a week, or running 40 mile a week. And then when he got to a man, he was working 60 hours a week on a building site and running 200 miles a week, running 10 mile to work, 10 mile home. So it's different being a child, 19, 18-year-old, to being a fully fit man, 25-year-old. A big difference. These kids have been playing against men. That's probably Speakman's fault, probably Lee Johnson's fault. They're playing too many kids, too many games on the trot. But that's for another day. But for Saturday, why not? I feel confident we're going to beat Charlton. I feel confident we are the team that's going to go on this late run at the back end of the season. Consistent run. Why has it got to come off the pack? Why? We could be the team that's going on a late run, and I believe we can do that.
Very well said, Terry. Jack, yourself, how confident are you that going into Saturday we can string 2 games together where we are undefeated and winning?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I was just waiting for Terry to whip the board up. I was surprised that the board
after.
There's no point. Exactly the same team as against Wigan.
Yeah,
well,
I agree with that.
In the minute that Jack's talking, could you go and knock it up for us, Terry?
No.
I agree with that. I think when you have a performance that was as good as it was last week, in my opinion, the best performance of the season. I know people were saying 5-0 over Sheffield Wednesday, but I think when you're at home, I think it's different. It's actually turning over and really completely comprehensively outplaying a team that's probably going to go on to get automatic promotion and look as comfortable as we do away from home. I think that was the best performance of the season. Confidence is going to be a bit high. It should have lifted after the bad run. They're going to be down in the dumps. They're going to be really. They haven't got a lot to play for as well. Charlton, I was looking at where they are in the league. They're not going to go down. I think probably another win or 2, and they should be safe. They're not going to make it into playoffs. So really, I don't think their motivation, again, famous last words, I'm saying this, but their motivation maybe won't be as high as ours will be. We've still got something really to play for. They haven't. I think Charlton, like you say, they're probably going to be safe and maybe about 12th to 15th, something along those lines. So really, we're intense and we get a goal up. I can't really see them, hopefully, not coming back anyway. But I think the same team, and I just think we just need to go again. All Alex Neil really needs to do is, look, lads, you did it last week. You turned it over a better team against Wigan, and play as much as you can like that again today. I know it's very easy to say, and the game's completely different ground and different scenario and everything. But I think, just go again. Simple as that.
Yeah, fair enough. And we may as well get the score predictions then. I think Terry's still faffing around. So, Jack, I'll go to you. Have you got a score prediction for Saturday?
I think it'll be tight. I don't think we'll walk over them. I think, games between us and Charlton, we never really, haven't really battered them, and they always seem to turn up against us, as a few teams do. But I think we're confident now. I think we've had our bad run. I think hopefully that's it now for the rest of the season. We're going a good run, as I've touched on a few times before, going to the playoffs with a bit of momentum. I'm going to say 2-1 to Sunderland.
Yeah, I do think that sometimes you just need to get a win to get out of a bad rut. I know you touched on there how you thought it was a really good performance away at Wigan on Saturday. I thought it was better. Defensively, I thought we were really tight. We were better in midfield, controlled it a little bit more. But by no stretch of the imagination did I think we were brilliant. But I look back to the Ipswich game back in November. We were in a really bad run of form then. Won 2-0 despite not playing brilliantly. And I just think sometimes it takes a win to kind of, get things going in the opposite direction. Confidence gets a little bit higher and there's a better feel around the place as well. We haven't had a midweek game. I'm not sure if Charlton had, but I feel as if that could play into our hands a little bit because we've had a lot of them, as you always do in League One throughout the course of the season. So I'm hoping that these kind of few little things we've got going for us can can, give us that extra advantage and beat a team that's massively out of form. And then you're looking at 2 wins in a row. Hopefully it's another clean sheet as well. Going into that final run-in, hopefully we can, get some really good form together. I don't see why we can't really. And then you go in the playoffs is the side with the advantage. Terry, we'll have a score prediction from your fine self.
Yes, well, it's great how people start predicting victories after one game. I mean, Jack, I think you both predicted defeats at last weekend. I think we fully predicted the defeat at the weekend. Now we've all suddenly changed around and one win and everyone's confidence is sky high. So I'm going to go for a 2-0 away win. Why not? They're not a bogey team, not a cursed team. We beat them first time we were in League One. We'll beat them on Saturday. No problem whatsoever.
Philly has joined us in the live chat, and as always, has went for his 3-1 prediction of a Sunderland win. Damiano Rincivio says the 2-2 draw. Full 007 says 1-2, so I'm guessing that's a 2-1 win, seeing as we are at the away side. Ian Barron, the Donington fan, says 5-5. What a high-scoring game that will be. Tafasta 1 says Charlton 2, Sunderland 0. Spiderman Jeff Hallcroft predicts us to win 15-0, so a massive range of score predictions in the live chat there. I'm going to go with a 2-0 win myself. Very optimistic, but I think we were a lot better at the back last weekend. Thought Patterson did a lot of things that he doesn't normally do in terms of commanding his area a little bit better. So I think if we can continue that into Charlton, as well as dominate the midfield a little bit better, like we did a little bit better against Wigan, have a little bit more of the ball, hopefully against a side that's, on paper, less of a threat, we can have another pretty controlling win. Terry?
I was asking you both a question. Who do you think was the weakest link last Saturday when you watched the full match? Embleton?
The only one I think didn't have a very good game was probably Corey Evans. Embleton wasn't great, but I think Corey Evans was the only one that stood out that didn't really have a good game. I think he wasn't terrible, but I thought he was not as... I mean, I said it on Sunday's stream. I thought pretty much every player gave a 7 or an 8, even out of 10, if not a 9. So I think Corey Evans maybe a 5 or a 6. He was one of the ones. I know he didn't play the full 90. I think he got taken off, didn't he? So maybe I'm being a bit harsh, but he was quiet. I thought Embleton was a bit quiet, but I thought Corey Evans was the only one I thought of didn't really play much. Everyone else I thought had a good game.
Yeah, go on.
Jack, go on, yeah, all right.
Yeah, no, I mean, I know what you're saying about Embleton. He did have a bit of a quiet game, but in the same breath, I don't think we had that great of possession in the final third. I think for Embleton to be effective, you need a lot of the ball, especially in those slightly wider areas going forward. When you're able to control a game and have the bulk of the ball in their final third, I think you'll definitely get something from Embleton. But with it being a bit more of a tighter affair, a bit more of a midfield battle on Saturday, I don't think he got given the opportunity to kind of do what it is he's paid to do. I would probably say Corey Evans, like Jack said. I mean, he didn't have a terrible game. Maybe that is a little bit biased in myself covering, because I haven't really rated him much recently, but. Yeah, I mean, nobody really had a bad game. I thought everyone at the very least was okay, but maybe Corey Evans, I would say so.
And do you both think the way to go forward is the 4-2-3-1?
I think it's about changing it when it matters. I think something we've struggled with this season. We've touched on it before. It's not rotating players enough, but I think as well it's important to have a few different systems you can rely on. Sometimes it's better to go 3 at the back. Sometimes it's better to, sit back entirely and go the 5 at the back. Sometimes it's better to go 4-3-3, 4-2-3-1, whatever it is. But, I mean, yeah, potentially it worked last Saturday. Why not? But I won't particularly begrudge any kind of, selection we go with.
Yeah, I think it's a bit difficult because I know a lot of our fans like 3 centre-backs, and I think you do have a bit more options, particularly when you're playing out from the back with 3 centre-backs. It's easier to distribute it out. But I think we looked so solid last week with the 4 at the back, and particularly I think Matete has been a key signing, because I think he acts as almost like a third centre-half, just in the way that he sweeps up, he's in amongst it all the time, he's battling, he's tackling, he can drop deep if he needs to. I think he's been a big influence. I think you just have to try and keep things going from last week, and just say, you don't need to do much. You beat a better team last week. If you play at the same levels as you do on Saturday against Charlton, you should be getting the win.
Do you not think that because we play 3 centre-backs is because we haven't got 2 strong enough centre-backs together? But do you think that because Doyle were being so young, we've had to have 3 centre-backs with Doyle in the team, because 2 of them by themselves, maybe Wright and Doyle, are not strong enough partnership, where maybe Jamajli and Wright might be a stronger partnership in the long term?
Potentially, yeah. I think it was probably a Lee Johnson thing. He liked the 3 centre backs, didn't he? He focused a lot on that, and we did seem to get some decent results from that as well. So I don't know if it was down to the weakness physically or what have you, but I just think we got some better results playing that. So it was kind of stuck to it. But we've proved that like Saturday we can win with a few different players in a different formation. So it's definitely something to think of. I think just try and keep things going, keep it the same way, like you said.
Yeah, Terry, I know you're touching on Doyle there, and potentially some poor performances from him throughout the season. And that's why we've maybe went 3 at the back. I do agree he has had some poor performances, especially as the seasons went on. But I think more importantly is the fact that we've just been so weak at the back. Been so open to conceding so many goals. We haven't kept many clean sheets, and we have been put under a few batterings. So I think something when you go 3 at the back, it just gives that little bit extra protection. I know it was the flip side of that, which can invite pressure. But I think sometimes when you have the 3 centre halves, it allows your wing backs to go forward and almost join that attack and be as creative as they can be, and they don't have as much kind of responsibility to get back as fullbacks do because you've got that extra man there. So sometimes by having 3 centre halves who aren't really going to go over the halfway line, you can kind of. I just think it's been because we've been so poor defensively. We thought, well, we'll stick an extra man there and change the shape a little bit of it.
I'm not trying to blame Doyle for anything. I'm just thinking with him being young and inexperienced and sort of, he might play better with 3 centre-backs where there's 2 of them at the back. His inexperience sometimes probably shows a little bit.
I think our lack of pace doesn't help either at the back as well. I don't think we've got, if we had one defender that was quite quick, do you know what I mean? We seem to be a little bit of lack of mobility. I think at the back sometimes we lack a quick play, but also a little bit of agility. Sometimes we're a bit slow, and we seem to be not great at reading that ball over the top. And when someone runs through, we look a bit leggy at the back. So I think having a third centre half, you can cope with it a little bit better, but maybe it reduces you as an attacking unit as well. You're having someone in a defensive position whereby you can maybe have someone a bit further forward with 4-2-3-1, influencing the game a bit higher up.
Yeah, I also think when you play 3 at the back, though, theoretically you do have one less, man to go in the midfield of the attack. But sometimes because you've got the 3 at the back, the rest of the lads can go forward a bit more. If you've got, a set of wing backs who are particularly good going forward, they don't have to think as much about getting back. They can probably, if you get hit on the counter, your wing backs can afford to get there a little bit later than your full backs typically can because you've got the 3 centre halves there to make that shape. All of a sudden, if a centre midfield drops right in, well, there's your back 4. So I think sometimes it can kind of work either way. Terry, just on one player, just on what you asked us earlier, one player I thought was a little bit suspect. I saw a lot of praise from was Jamalji. Now I know we'll have talked in detail last Sunday about I did watch the show despite not being on. And I saw a lot of praise from him. I heard Gary Bennett was singing his praise on the radio, and I think across social media and YouTube and stuff, I've seen a lot of people, saying he had a really good game. But I think, if you are looking for a weak link, I would possibly, even though we did keep a clean sheet, possibly throw him into that conversation because I think it was probably just match sharpness and fitness, if anything, really. But there were a couple of little mistakes here and there that I think probably just have to be noted. And, if they're made over the course of the season, would probably be quite costly.
What I did notice with Jamajli, though, that he was clearing the ball well with his head, so he was always getting the right position and getting the ball away. 1 or 2 chances, the balls were coming over the top or coming across, and he was getting the ball away out of play rather than messing about, getting on the ground, passing the ball around and passing it away, giving it away. For me, he was just getting in and doing his job as a defender and getting the ball away.
Yeah, and I do think I saw a lot of potential from getting better. We definitely needed someone to come into that position to give Doyle a few games out of the side. Hopefully, he can come back a better player. And I thought there was, like I said, there was a lot of potential from getting better and with a bit sharpness and a bit more fitness, and he gets used to playing a little bit more. I think he can only get better. But lads, I think we're over time a little bit actually. So before we do round off tonight's show, I was trying to say 161 people watching, 131 likes. So if you haven't already, one last push, see if we can get as many likes as we can. It is free to like as well as subscribe if you haven't already done so, and you won't miss any of our future streams or videos. We were, of course, joined by James Copley for the majority of the show, but we've also been joined by Charlie the Mad Mistake. Terry, say bye-bye to everyone.
See you all on Saturday.
Jack, say goodbye to our lovely viewers.
See you later, lads and lasses.
There we go. It's his typical phrase. Thank you, everyone, for watching as well. Like I said, if you haven't already, please do like and subscribe. You may be able to join us for a watch-along on Saturday for the game, but if not, we will definitely be back for the Sunday Bunch, 7 p.m. live on Sunday. So thank you for watching. Take care, and we'll see you later. Bye-bye.